Welcome to Health Insurance Doesn't Have to Suck. I'm Brian Calvert. This is a short, focused podcast, and it's designed to help you make health insurance easier to understand. Last episode, we talked about why health insurance is confusing in the first place, and I believe that comes down to language, the language of how health insurance works. And there's a handful of terms that really aren't fully understood sometimes that actually all work together. The terms that I like to talk about are the 5 most common are going to be premium, deductible, coinsurance, copay, and max out-of-pocket. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Premium. Premium is the amount you're going to pay to enter the system. Regardless of if you go to the doctor or use the plan, you're going to pay the premium every month as a means of transferring the risk to the insurance company should you need that service. Okay? Deductible. Deductible is the amount that you're responsible for before the plan kicks in. As an example, if you have a $4,000 deductible, you're going to be responsible for the first $4,000 of covered services. Now, I've had people come to me and say, Brian, I don't have $4,000 to fund my deductible before I use it, because they thought you had to pre-fund it, and that's not the case. You only pay towards the deductible for the services rendered as you use them. Okay, so if you have a $400 bill, you're going to pay towards that deductible $400. As well as deductibles don't reset every visit. I've had people think that the deductible reset every time you went to the doctor, which would be outrageous, of course. And there are some other nuances. For instance, copays. Copays usually are before deductible, and we'll talk about that. Typically, if you have a higher deductible, the lower the premium, because there's more risk for you. A lower deductible, the higher the premium, because there's more risk for the insurance company. And lastly, something else to know about deductibles is that typically you'll have an individual deductible and a family deductible, whereas you have to meet the individual deductible for yourself. And then for the family, you may only have 2 family members that have to meet their deductible, and then all, say, 5 members are covered. So when you're looking at a plan, you want to know what the individual and the family deductible is. Next would be copay. This is the fixed amount that you pay for covered services. As an example, if you have a PCP visit, that might be $25. If you have a specialist visit, that might be $50. An urgent care might be $50. And an emergency room might be $500. Deductibles, copays are typically before deductible. However, they don't count towards the deductible. So there's that. But they do count towards your max out-of-pocket. So this is where all the terms come together. They can get really confusing. So again, I'll say that. Copays are typically right away before deductible. They do not count towards the deductible typically, but they do count towards your max out-of-pocket. Once you've met your deductible, now you typically get into the coinsurance. Coinsurance is the percentage of the services you pay once you've met your deductible. Now, you still pay copays during the coinsurance stage, and you pay the coinsurance until the max out-of-pocket is met. Coinsurance typically can be 20 or 30%. Then you have that max out-of-pocket. Max out-of-pocket, MOOP, is one of the most important things to know. This is going to be your asset protection or your catastrophic protection. Once that max out-of-pocket is met, the insurance company is going to pay 100% of the services from that point on. So let me see if I can try to wrap all this up in an example for you, because I know we've talked about a lot of things. So if you had a plan with a $1,000 deductible, 20% coinsurance, and a $5,000 max out-of-pocket. If you went and had a surgery done, and the surgery was $2,000, you would pay the first $1,000. With $1,000 remaining, you would pay your coinsurance of 20%, which is $200. So you'd pay $1,200 for that service. But remember, your deductible hasn't reset yet. So you've met your deductible, you're in the coinsurance stage. So anything future for the rest of the year, if you needed another surgery, for instance, that was another $2,000, you would pay your 20% coinsurance, which is $400, until you reach that $5,000 max out-of-pocket. So that's the full cycle of how these plans work. I hope that made sense to you and that the examples were easy to understand. In the next episode, we're going to talk about why premiums rise, talk about what's behind the spike in premiums lately, and see if we can get into the nitty-gritty on that a little bit. If you find these conversations helpful, make sure you follow the episodes and the show And if you have any friends or family that may find health insurance confusing, feel free to share this episode with them. I also write a short newsletter called Clarity Notes that kind of comes along with this episode and expands on some of the things we talked about. So, thanks for joining another episode of Health Insurance Doesn't Have to Suck. I'm Brian Calvert, and we'll keep building clarity from here.